Hi everybody. In this video I'm going to show you how to make trim sheets. So the reason why I make trim sheets is because when I'm doing my let me hide this. When I'm doing my objects that are not hero objects per se, and I don't really want to spend much time doing a high poly, what I would do is just make the simple low poly mesh, and then I'll make a trim sheet and I'll unwrap it in a way where I can actually use that trim sheet. And I made this scene just to show you what that is, and then after that we'll go and actually make the trim sheet and I'll show you everything that I use behind it. So what I want to show you is, right now we have this very simple panel. I'm actually going to apply a couple of more loops here and make it more round. Whoops. Okay, so we have this panel, very simple, there's nothing to it, but I unwrapped it in a way that I'm capable to use, let me hide this, my trim sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how that looks first. So I have my object here and I'm going to bring back my materials in 3D Studio Max, and I'm going to assign the material that has the normal map. So I assign the material, and as you can see I have lots of details, and that is without adding any having to bake down from any high poly model. I'm just using my trim sheets, and that is the beauty of this. And I got some distortion over here. We're gonna fix that right now, and that way I can show you how this actually works. So make sure this is planar. I'm gonna put this to the side. So the way it works is I unwrap this in a way that I can use the trim sheet. So because I already added the map into this model right here, I'm gonna go into the map. Actually 3D Studio Max shows the map very dark, but what I want to show you is that I can unwrap this and make use of the trim sheet. So I have this rounded detail here. If I wanted to make that detail part of my trim sheet, of my middle piece, I'll just unwrap my middle piece in a way that englobes those two circles. There you go. And that is why you should always scale your UV shells in both axes, so you don't have any sort of stretching. So I'm going to put this piece back where it was. It was right here, so we can have this nice detail. Actually gonna make it bigger, and that way we can have those details coming into like this. Actually, I like it this way better. Okay, so we have this detail here, and now I have my trim right here to the side, which is actually creating this indentation around the whole this whole piece. So let's say I wanted to change that to, because I have two little lines here. I have this one and I have this one, which are a little bit different. One is an indentation, one's coming out. So I can choose whichever I want. So let's say I want to put that one in the top. I can unwrap and put my UV shell over here, so that one goes to the top, and now you see how it looks. And actually, if I collapse that, you can see that we have our floor. Actually, it looks better when we are rendering real time. Max doesn't do very well with normals, but as you can see, this is my way of controlling where the detail is going to go without actually taking the time to make a high poly version of this floor panel. and that way I can reuse that same map in other surfaces and do it in a different way where I can get some variation just using the same texture. And the importance of that is that you'll have only one texture to use for many different panels like floors, walls, and that would save you a lot of time when you are actually in the gaming industry and they need you to churn out some assets real fast. So this is a fast way to do things, and it's one of the most efficient ways that I find to make the assets on a scene that are not super important, that are not part of my hero objects. So this is what I'm gonna be doing for things like the floor, the walls, maybe the columns. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how actually I make the trim sheets and how to make it work with the panel that I already have. Okay, let's continue with the trim sheets. So what I'm going to do is just show you guys what I have here. This is just one polygon that I created from a plane. So when you're creating your plane, you have to make sure that your polygon's square. And the reason why is because we are trying to represent the texture map, and texture maps are usually in square forms. There are some times where they're actually like in a rectangular form, which I have seen in some Overwatch assets, but usually your texture sheets are gonna be squared. So let's keep the trim sheet square for this one. And what I'm going to do is hide my low poly. Again, they are both similar, there's nothing to them. Just remember to unwrap the low poly one. So I'm just gonna make sure this one's unwrapped, because sometimes we create planes and depending on the software you have, the plane it's not created with UVs. So make sure you have UVs. So I'm gonna talk a little bit more about UV unwrapping on the next part of this video, but for now just make sure you have UVs on your low poly plane, which is going to be your texture map. Okay, so now I'm going to hide this. I'm going to work with my high poly. Okay, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create some lines just like what sci-fi and okay, I'm just going to create some lines just like, you know, those indents that sci-fi details always have. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. That's going to be very easy. Just connect to, and I'm going to make it very, very narrow. And now we're just going to move it to the side, right about here. And since this is an indent, it's going to be going down. So I'm going to extrude it down, and maybe minus 0.5. That should be enough. I'm gonna delete those polygons over there. And I'm going to, just to make this a little bit more interesting, I'm going to make these two come close together. And now I'm going to apply turbo smooth to everything, just to smooth everything out. Alright, so 2 should suffice. However, I do want a little bit of sharpness, so I'm going to add some control lines to that. And since this is a very tight space, what I'm going to do is select them both, do a ring selection, and instead of adding a strip flow, I'm going to connect, and I'm going to do 2 of them like this. And let's see how the turbo smooth looks. Alright, very nice. Maybe we will move this line closer to the edge. Same deal with this line. So that way it's a little bit sharper. There you go. Got some nice sharp line. And actually, I'm going to make another control lines within this polygon right here. So ring and connect, and that'll make it a lot sharper. Okay. So we have that. Now I'm going to make a second line, which is going to be coming out, but it's not going to come out too far away, just a little bit. So we're going to do exactly the same thing, which is select both of them, connect, make sure they're very close, and I'm going to bring it over here. But this time I'm going to extrude it up 0.4, and I'm going to scale it this way just so it looks more interesting. I'm going to get rid of those polygons because I don't need them. And now what we are going to do is select all of these just so we can get actually I'm going to make this more narrow or narrower. And now it's time for the control lines. Sorry, sometimes it gets away from me. So 1, 2, 3, and ring selection. And what we're gonna do is just do connect. We have 2, and there you go. We have our loops, and we have 1 here, and whoops, I wasn't intending to do that. 1 here and 1. I'll just put it here, move it. There you go. Okay, let's test that turbosmooth. Very nice. Very nice. So what we're going to do right now is do a little bit of floating geometry, so we can have some paneling, not some paneling, but some little details for what we're going to do with things like our floor and the rest of the panels, like the side panels on the computers and all of that. So let's start with that. And actually, let's start with the panels for the computers. What I'm going to do is extract this polygon. I'm going to activate edge mode. I'm going to extract this polygon as a new object. Right now, I'm not concerned about names or anything because this is just a hot poly. It's going to be big. I'm not going to use this in the game, so I'm not concerned about names at the moment. Put this in the center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to inset. Inset like this. And now we're going to use our scale tool to make that panel. Now we're having some problems right here, and we're gonna get those fixed. Actually, let's get that fixed real quickly. Let's remove that, and that takes care of our problem over there. Bring this down a little bit lower. And I'm going to maybe bring all of this to one side because the sheet doesn't have to be that big. So what I'm going to do is cut over here and cut over here. And maybe just eliminate that one. We can get rid of this. And what we're going to do is create the little panel for that. So it's going to be coming inward. So minus 0.5, minus 1.5 should be enough. Bring it this way. Maybe that was a little bit too much. Inset again. That was, well, that's a lot of inset. 0.5. Actually, we want, let's try some numbers. 4 is too much. 3, 2. 2 is okay. And you're gonna see why I'm doing this very soon. Convert to, we're here, and I'm thinking, do I want to chamfer or do I want to extrude? Let's try with extrude, and if not, then we'll go back to chamfer. These are some techniques that we already used in while modeling the floor. Okay, actually looks the way I want it to. So what I'm going to do is, I'm actually going to leave it like that, and we'll use the turbosmooth to control everything. So as you can see, now it's looking very weird. We just need control lines. Activate this. I'm actually gonna, I'll activate it manually later. And make sure we have control lines here. Actually, we don't need it here, but we need it here. Yeah, we do. So ring selection, connect, and let's make sure it's kind of sharp, not so sharp. And let's see how that looks. Alright, awesome. However, there is some pinching right here that I'm not liking, so let's see if we can fix that. There you go, that took care of it. So we have one nice panel. Actually, there's something that I want to experiment with real quick over here, so I'm going to make a clone in case I messed up. And I'm going back here. I'm going to do, actually what I'm going to do first is delete these lines. And let's do this. Ring and chamfer. Okay, I kind of like this look. Let's see one more. Yeah, but it's a little wobbly, so we might have to work a little bit on this piece. So let's just do that. First thing we need to do is to make this not be an angon. Very important. So just gonna connect those. And let's start adding the loops. So I'm gonna try with just one loop on each side and see how that looks. And it still looks wobbly, so let's just use all the control lines. And we're good over here. Actually compare this one to this one. I like this one better because it has more rounded edges than this one. This one looks fine, and if you want you can keep this one if you already made it, but I think I'm gonna take this one for the trim sheet just because it looks a little bit more refined and it has those nice borders. I'm actually gonna chamfer this border to give it a little bit more detail. So that means I have to remove those lines. And I think 0.5 should be okay. Wait, before we do that, we're gonna need control lines around here and around here. Let's see how that looks. Okay, maybe we do control lines in within the chamfer, just so we get a little bit more sharpness. But since this is one loop, it's very easy. Just ring and connect everything. Alright, I like how that detail looks, so I'm just going to get rid of that one. And I'm going to put this detail on the trim sheet. Right around here. Just going to reduce it, doesn't have to occupy the whole trim sheet. Just so we have more space for different things. There you go. So when I think I mentioned floating geometry in the computer paneling video. The reason why I mentioned that is because, as you can see, if I don't hover over it, you wouldn't be able to tell that this piece is not part of this piece. So it's just a visual trick. And when it bakes, it's going to bake as if this was part of this piece. So this is what I call floating geometry, and actually that wasn't me. I just got that from many tutorials that I've watched online. So I like to use a lot of floating geometry because it facilitates my work and it makes me be more efficient. So instead of wasting time creating another high poly asset and then creating the low poly, I can just create the low poly and use a trim sheet, and I should be fine. So let's create some other details to put around here. So I'm going to quickly create a cylindrical detail. You know, your average cylindrical detail that you see on every sci-fi thing. Activate this, convert it down, and delete this. Okay, you're gonna see me just doing various insets. Bevel. Yeah, I'm gonna use bevel as opposed to just extruding. I'm gonna go with -1 and -0.7. Whoops. Okay, now we can extrude it like this. Do 1, and then I can convert this to, I can chamfer, maybe not so much. Okay, now what I'm going to do is just do the control lines. So I already did that one. Actually, let's get rid of that one. Ring. Let's do this one first. Do the control lines around the ring. And now we can do the one in the middle. Okay, now when I apply turbo smooth, maybe 2 times. And we have this nice detail. Okay, let's put it right around here. So when you are stacking your details on the trim sheet, make sure that you leave a little bit of padding. So as you can see, I'm leaving a little bit of space in between them. Just because when you're unwrapping and putting your textures in place, you also want to have a little padding. Okay, so I'm going to ensure that this is flushed with my